Hey there, thank you so much for joining us for another riveting episode of Behind Breaking Bond. We got a little slow start. We had some technical difficulties beyond our control.
Kind of like the voting, right?
There you go. There you go.
We didn't have enough paper or battery.
Yes, there was always something, right? That's always something. I was off last week, so we weren't here for you last Tuesday, but we're back as usual. Joining me is
Andy Kahan, Director of Victim Services, Crime Stoppers at Houston. So obviously it's Thanksgiving this week right here. I couldn't find like a turkey shirt, so the best thing I have is a South Dakota jackrabbit. So I don't know, maybe with inflation this will actually suffice here. So I am wearing a jackrabbit shirt. So
we are not telling anyone to have rabbit for Thanksgiving dinner.
I know. I'm actually and this was pretty cool. And I gave you like one of the first ones. So I got these trading cards that were given to me at the Crime Stoppers Gala right here. And again, this is not a real rat, so don't. I already want to know it's not real, so I don't need to pee to people or whatever. But that's pretty cool. So I felt pretty cool with this.
Tell us about how was the event?
It was at our Crime Stoppers annual gala. It was at Minute Maid Park on the field.
How cool was that?
Which was really neat. I got chased off a bunch of times by the quote security people to please get off the field. But I did take a couple pictures of me at the wall, leaping, which was about 4 inches from me leaping, trying to make it. So it was really. And then they let us actually in the dugout.
Really?
So Rania Mankarios, our CEO, and I are in the dugout. So we're taking pictures and we're pretending like we're talking real strategy. How are we going to pull this off? I can't believe we're going to do. So it was a really neat deal. It was the highest fundraising event that Crime Stoppers has. So we raised more money than last year, which was our top fundraiser ever. So all in all, you couldn't have asked for better. 400 to 500 people there. We did a fireside chat with some of the victims, and you've done some of their stories. We had Amy Castillo, whose brother Joshua Sandoval was murdered. We had Lourdes Medina, whose mother Martha Medina was murdered in the McDonald's, and we had Bob Noelli, whose daughter was murdered in an unsolved case. So all in all, it was a spectacular evening.
Excellent. Now this is our first live stream since the election. We didn't do it the week after because, like I said, I was on vacation. What do you think of the election?
Well, it was obviously very interesting. So the people of Harris County have made their decision. So the judges that were up for election, that were incumbent judges, that's my understanding for the most part, every single felony district court judge won, because it looks like some last minute ballots that are now counted went in favor of the 180th District Court Judge, Deshaun Jones, and a few of the misdemeanor court judges lost. So basically, what you have now, you're going to have. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the next few upcoming years. But I will say something, because I had a lot of people that were, kind of like, I can't believe this, and I'm going to say this, and I know, but I will tell you, I have seen a tremendous difference in the last year. And I've seen, and it's all positive, on the bench. Obviously, there's stuff that, we're going to sit in and take a look at. But you and I have talked about this. We've seen bonds, astronomical bonds, that we've never, ever seen before.
Right.
$1 million, $1.5 million, stuff like that a year ago you would not have had. We've seen bonds denied that you would not have had before. So I do think the message that we got out resonated, because I have seen it change, and the numbers of individuals that I have documented that have been allegedly murdered by a defendant on a multiple felony bond or felony PR, personal recognizance bond, or bond forfeiture has dramatically dropped this year. And those numbers tell me everything. So it's not the same as we've had it in 2020 and 2021.
But I think we got to remember too that, like you said, all of these judges are back on the bench, and they're going to be on the bench for the next 4 years.
Yeah, like I said, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens from here on out. And don't, also remember that you've got a legislative session
Right.
that's going to be starting in a few months. And I know there's going to be some bills, some of them have actually already been filed, that are going to take a look at what's going on, particularly with the bail situation, particularly with some of the bonds that we saw that were lower than the 10% bond. And another bill that was filed to help alleviate the overcrowding of the backlog of cases would put additional courts that we desperately need in Harris County.
Do you think that, we were talking about this earlier, that Texas is one of the few states where you actually have Democrats and Republicans running against each other to be like a criminal district court judge? Most states don't do that. They don't go by party, do they?
The Houston Chronicle put out an op-ed about judicial accountability, and I agreed with most of the points that they were making. And so I did fire off a letter to their editor, which is yet to be published and likely won't be published. But basically, I was agreeing with most of their points. And one of the things, Texas is one of the few states in the country in which you actually elect a judge based on political affiliation.
Yeah. Party.
And you and I, we interviewed judges, we interviewed candidates who are running, who are now judge from both parties here.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I took away from our conversations is that it shouldn't matter what your party affiliation is when you're on the bench. And I thought some of them were really kind of uncomfortable having a label put on them. I don't know if that's going to change in the near future, but I do think it does need to be changed so that good quality candidates don't have to fear about having a label on running on a party affiliation. Because when you're dealing with an election, you had like 100 some odd, choices on. That's a lot of, to expect the general public to know who they're voting on. So I would hope that Texas mirrors what other states do and goes by a nonpartisan appointment basis.
Well, you got to wonder too, when we had Bill King several weeks ago, he brought up an interesting point too. Should that be an elected office? I mean, should you be voting on who's going to be criminal district court judges?
Like I said, obviously Texas is one of the few states that allows it. Most of the states don't allow it.
Yeah.
And so I know it's been discussed, but it's never really had a full-blown, full-court press to take a look at this issue. And perhaps now it's time to take a good look. Is this how we want our judges to be on the bench when we're asking them to be neutral arbitrators?
For every other thing, they're supposed to sit there and not really have an opinion. Well, whenever you start bringing in politics, whether it's Republican or Democrat, you're going to have your own personal opinion on things.
And like it or not, you can be influenced by, which way the public or which way the wind is blowing on any given day. So it's very similar to, an umpire. An umpire's put out there just like to call balls and strikes on an equal level, not giving any advantage to the home team or giving advantage to, just like you're not going to give advantage to the defendant, or in this case, the state, i.e. the victim of the offense. So I would certainly hope that somewhere down the future that Texas does take in turns to what most other states do. And I think it'll alleviate a lot of burden off of voters who are asked to make a decision, that quite frankly, most people don't keep up with. And they're looking at, I don't know who to vote for. Well, I'm a Republican, I'll vote for this. I'm a Democrat, I'll vote for that without really knowing.
And the thing too that I've never really quite understood about doing it, and I brought this up before, especially in family court situations where, all right, these people are running. Of course, you got to have contributions. You got to have money to run. They're not going to be funded by the public. They're not going to be funded by big groups. They're going to be funded by attorneys.
Special interest.
Yes.
Those that have an interest in,
Yeah.
right, correct.
And, I mean, there's undoubtedly, you're going to have a judge there's going to be attorneys in there that he might have to appoint an ad litem. He might have to appoint an attorney. Well, more than likely, he's going to appoint the attorney who contributed to his campaign.
Yeah, no, and that's why I think needs to be some sort of commission and initiated committees to take a look at, is this how we truly want
Right.
our elections to be based on party affiliations, which can easily be influenced by contributions.
Right. Well, when you look at, and again, that we live in a democracy that whoever gets the most votes, they won. And that should be how it is. No doubt about it. But part of me says, does the majority of people out in Houston, Harris County, do they want people repeat violent offenders, running around, committing war crimes, and just getting a bond and getting out of jail? Common sense tells you that most people, if you ask them that question, they're going to say, no, I don't want that. But when you look at the way the votes went, the votes are saying, well, yeah, as a matter of fact, I think I do want that. I think I'm okay with repeat violent offenders just going in and out of jail.
It's kind of oxymoronic when you take a good look at it. And that's why it's going to be, from our perspective, and from my perspective as a victim advocate for 30 some odd years, you're going to see a lot of things happening at state capitol. Right now, one of the issues, of course, that we hear, and the Houston Chronicle brought this up in their editorial, is that judges are bound by the statutes that legislators give them, the
Right.
tools to work with. And one of the things that we hear all the time is, well, we didn't have a choice. We had to give a bond because
Constitution says we have to.
We have to give a bond. The only one we can't do is capital murder, but that's, neither here nor there on that case. So I don't see any harm, and it was brought up last session. And I'm hoping that this session, because of all the attention that has now been played, particularly here in Harris County, on we don't have a choice. We need additional tools, that a constitutional amendment does go to the Texas voters to decide whether or not judges can have discretion.
Right.
And that's a key word, discretion. It's not a mandate. It's not like, okay, you're charged with aggravated robbery, you're charged with murder, I see by your, no bond. No. It gives them additional tools, particularly in cases that we have profiled, where
Right.
we've seen numerous times defendants in and out on multiple bonds, and then they have to give a bond. I don't see any downside with giving discretion. And based upon what I know in the story, I would assume, and I don't like to make assumptions, but I would think those who are on the bench in Harris County
Would want that, yeah.
would not just want it, but they would use it very cautiously and judiciously. I don't expect this rampant, stamping, no bond, no bond, no bond, no
Right.
bond. I think it would be used in cases that would be most worthy and based on merit.
Well, the great thing about discretion, that means that you're deciding by the case. It's not some ironclad, this is the way it is, and you can't vary from it. Discretion means you've got discretion that
And
you
I would
can
think
look
you
at
would
it.
want additional tools.
Right,
To
yeah.
work with. So we're going to look real hard at that again this upcoming legislative session. I know there was another bill, because we've done stories on a lot of the catalytic converter
Yes.
cases that have have wreaked so much havoc, and have actually led to several deaths, including a Harris County deputy from the sheriff's office. So there was a bill filed by Senators Whitmire and Alvarado that would enhance punishment if the offender who is caught stealing catalytic converters actually has a gun or a firearm upon them. So I think that's kind of like the first, pardon the pun, resounding shot
Yeah.
that was heard about enhancing penalties for those that are using firearms when they're committing an offense. And firearms is on the talking points of everything. I mean, again, I'll mention the Chronicle, because their Sunday cover story was, I think, 53 children
Yeah.
killed by gun violence. And yeah, gun violence, but they were murdered.
Right.
We've kind of replaced that word murdered now, if you've noticed, particularly in the media. They don't say people were killed by gun violence.
Yeah.
It's kind of, a code word, but they were murdered. We don't
Exactly.
say that word anymore. But I think it's an issue that's going to be brought up this session.
And you had mentioned too that there could be taking a look at having a law statewide that would require 10%. You would have to have 10% of the bond
So
amount.
that actually initiated in Harris County when we found out that some bail bondsmen, very few of them, were actually going below the standard threshold that we thought for years. You and I had no idea that you could go below 10%.
2-3%.
I was like, huh? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
You got out on. We had no idea that was happening. So as a result of that, the Harris County Commissioners Court passed a local mandating.
Required.
Right. And so now a bill filed by State Representative Ann Johnson, and I believe Senator Whitmire will also follow up on the Senate, that would mandate that statewide. I don't know if it occurs much. I don't know, because we didn't know this was going on here. But again, I don't see any harm in at least mandating a minimum 10% that you have to pay up front in order to get out, and not allowing a bail bond company the opportunity, like you were buying a car.
Yeah.
Well, I'll go down to 6 if you put up this amount.
Yeah, or a payment plan.
Right. What's your trade in? Is your trade in are you trading in your house? What do you have for value? So it's going to be interesting to see how this gets, heard of on a statewide level.
Right.
Or are they just going to say, oh, it's you guys in Harris County again. You guys are on another planet where you are here. We don't need it.
And come January, when all of this starts getting going, then, and we'll kind of tell you who you need to talk to on that, but you're going to want to talk to your lawmaker and let them know how you feel about the issue.
Let me tell you, and going on what you were saying, because Crime Stoppers is aware that the public wants to be engaged at the Capitol, but they just don't know how.
Right.
And I get that. Well, how do we're going to actually have, and we're still working on a date. It'll be sometime in January. We're going to have a community forum here at Crime Stoppers where you, the public, can learn how to get involved.
That's great.
In the legislative sessions, how to get in touch with your state rep, how to look for bills, and so we're going to have a big forum here teaching people how to do that.
That's excellent. I don't think anybody's really done that before either.
Not to my knowledge.
Wow.
So.
And we've been here for a couple of years now, and we're not going anywhere. We're going to keep doing this. And again, this whole thing has not been about Republican or Democrat. It's a public safety issue. I've been doing this. I know you've been doing it based on that. It's a public safety issue. That's what it is. It's not Republicans and Democrats and that sort of thing. And yeah, we are going to keep track of what these judges are doing. And if we see, like we've been doing, repeat violent offenders running amok and no one's stopping them, and the door is continuing to revolve at the courthouse, we're going to continue to tell you about that.
Yep. So like I said, if you have a case out there that you want us to look at, that's your man.
There you go. There you go. Hey, be sure to tune into tonight's Breaking Bond at 9. It's a little off the beaten track, if you will, for us, but you're going to hear about two different defendants that got PR bonds, got out of jail free cards, and they, in one situation, one of the defendants is accused of killing a friend, and the other is accused of beating up his mother, all happening within a very short time.
All of them were released in November and charged with new offenses same month, within a very short time.
Yeah, so be sure to tune in tonight, Fox 26 News at 9 for tonight's Breaking Bond. Thank you so much for sticking with us, and please be with us in the future, and have a happy Thanksgiving.
You bet.
Bye. That's a special effect.
Yes. It's a thing.